Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 11th episode of Battles and Voices. I'm Lathika, and I'm the founder and host.
And I'm Camden, and I'm the co-host.
And
And together
together
we
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 serve
serve
on
on
the
the executive
executive
team
team
of
of
Vitals
Battles
and
and Voices.
Voices.
Battles and Voices shines a light on the human side of healthcare, sharing the real stories and experiences of healthcare professionals in a way that inspires and guides students and aspiring medical leaders all around the world.
Please welcome our guest, Clareth.
Clara, thank you so much for joining us today. It's an honor to have you here. To start things off, could you give us a brief introduction about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, of course. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate you guys reaching out. And yeah, well, currently I am a physician assistant student, and I was born and raised in Mexico. I grew up over there and then moved here to the United States when I was about 12 years old. I graduated from the University of Texas at Dallas, and I've pretty much been raised in Texas as well. So I graduated with a neuroscience degree and a Spanish minor. And during my time as an undergraduate student, and even after, I worked in a lot of different healthcare um, positions, such as a medical assistant in plastic surgery, and then as a medical interpreter at a community hospital, and then as a medical assistant in primary care, and then also as an EMT or an emergency tech and paramedic. And some of my hobbies include just spending time with my dachshund. I have a little dog. Her name's Maple. Going to the gym, going to concerts, and building puzzles and playing video games.
Sounds wonderful. So what inspired you to pursue a career in healthcare and eventually become a physician assistant?
Sure. So I don't think there was just one reason of why I decided to pursue the healthcare world. Um, Someone honestly in middle school told me you would be a really good doctor because you really care about people and taking care of them. And so ever since then, it just kind of stuck the idea in my head. And so I continued exploring the field. And in high school, I ended up doing like all those courses, healthcare courses, and ultimately ended up doing this really amazing program through my high school that's called clinical rotations and exposes you to the healthcare field in a very young age. And so through there, it just further confirmed that this is the field that I wanted to go to. But, you know, when you're younger, all you ever hear is just like the doctor position or nursing, and you don't hear about these other careers in healthcare. Healthcare has so many different careers. So I knew that I wanted to do healthcare, but not completely like what specifically I wanted to do. But in it was like later in my undergrad that I found out about the PA profession, and I really enjoyed it because to me, I wanted to be a provider as soon as possible. And so, and be able to make a difference as soon as possible. To me, experience is so important. And that's exactly what the PA profession prioritizes experience and um, just being a capable provider that can do a lot for your patients. So, yeah, that's pretty much like the short summary. I have a lot more, but another thing too was representation. You know, whenever I grew up here in the United States, there wasn't a lot of representation in the healthcare field. Whenever I would go to my parents' appointments, like healthcare appointments, they would often struggle finding somebody that spoke Spanish, and so many times now, thankfully, there's a lot of interpreters available. But back then, I had to be the interpreter for my family. And it's just a lot to put on a little kid, but also, like, what else is there to be done if there's no one to communicate, you know? And so that was another thing that was always on my mind. Like, if my parents are struggling, that and I'm able to help them, I can't imagine other people that don't have that person that speaks English for them or interprets for them, how that would be difficult. So yeah, that's one of the biggest things that also kept me going.
That's so beautiful to hear. As a first generation college graduate and immigrant, your story is so powerful. How have these experiences shaped your journey in medicine?
Sure. So being an immigrant wasn't easy, and I'm still an immigrant, obviously, but it's it's very complicated. It comes with a lot of baggage, but um, with the language barrier, it was difficult to understand certain concepts, more complicated concepts. Like there, I remember in undergrad, there were some courses that I had to learn in Spanish first, and then kind of from there take it in English and take my exams in English. And so it definitely is a lot, but it's possible. And not seeing enough people that look like me in my field also was obviously a little bit like sad, but also it kept me going, and it kept that fire in me because I was like, if I'm the one to pave the path, like what an amazing thing that is, what an amazing privilege that is. So I I wanted to be that person and help others, and even struggling with paying for school and not having, enough money to pay for private tutoring because of that first generation um, struggle. You just don't know enough. You just don't know everything that everyone else who has a lot of knowledge, you're just not at the same level. But yeah, it just helps honestly become more driven and more stubborn. I call myself like a stubborn person because all of these things have just been in my life, and I take it as a challenge and try to like grow from there and be able to, you know, come out stronger.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. So representation is such an important theme in your story. Can you talk about why it matters so much in healthcare and the kind of impact you hope to make for your community?
Yeah, so kind of like I was saying, I think representation is super important because in specifically, I'm talking about healthcare too, because this is where I've seen it the most, where there's not a lot of healthcare workers that speak Spanish, and there's a lot of population here in the United States that speaks Spanish only. And even the culture itself, the Hispanic culture is so enormous, and there's so much to understand that it's important to have people that grew up with that culture and be able to serve those people because they just have a deeper understanding. I really think that even if somebody commits their life to learning a certain culture, like you will still find things to learn, and you won't truly like know it all until you live there for at least like a couple of years. And so I can very vividly remember a certain memory from when I was an interpreter, and how my cultural background came to help. So, for example, there was this one um, patient that was explaining their diet, and they were explaining what they had the entire day because they were struggling with diabetes. And so they were trying to work with their provider to help kind of like see what foods they should be having and what foods they shouldn't. And so they were listing a bunch of foods, and one of them was like agua de fruta, so it's like fruit water, and that's very like relevant in our Hispanic culture. But something that the provider completely missed is that this is really unhealthy, especially for diabetic patients, because the fruit is already very sugary, but whenever they're preparing the water, they add more sugar to it. So the provider was just like, "Oh, okay, so that's like juice. Okay, so let's keep going." And I was like, "Okay, just a clarification, like this is really sugary. This is how it's made and everything." And it just kind of made him go back, and he was like, "Actually, let's not have that at all." And so I think there's a lot of different things that can get, buried while you are taking care of someone if you don't truly know all of the culture. And it's just, it's important because just like there are those things in the Hispanic culture, there's some of those things as well in other cultures as well. And it's important to have representation in all cultures to be able to serve those specific people.
That's so beautiful that you were able to help that lady with her diabetes by removing that. Um, because that stuff is really sugary, I will say.
Yes.
Moving on to the next question. You mentioned your family and Hispanic culture as your biggest motivators. What keeps you going, especially in challenging or discouraging moments?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things for me is just thinking about my future patients and thinking about what I'm going through right now and the struggling of, all the studying and all the stress and everything. Like, it's so minimal compared to the pain that they are probably going through because of their specific condition, because of the specific sickness that they're going through. And it's a privilege for me to be able to be here right now and learn all of this. And I just keep remembering, my family. I'm the first one in my family to be in the medical field. So that keeps me going. And at the end, this will all be worth it. All my struggles, all the hard work, it will all be worth it because my family, my friends, myself will have someone that will always be there for them in case they need anything medical related. And that's super important for me. And also being able to provide for patients in both English and Spanish. I think that's another thing that really gets that fire in me going. It's not something that you will find in every person, and I really do find that as a privilege. It's really a privilege for me to be able to do that in the future.
That's really beautiful, and I love your passion for it. I'm just going to ask an off-topic question here, real quick.
Yeah.
I was wondering what field you're interested in. Like, what field do you see yourself doing after PA school?
That's so hard. I'm keeping my mind open, but I definitely have considered emergency medicine a lot. I started as an EMT and I loved it so much that I wanted to keep going as a paramedic, and I learned to love it even more. I love the chaos and just how unpredictable everything is and how quick on your feet you have to be. And I just love that so much. But I've also just heard from a lot of people that it tends to be a high burnout field, that people tend to go into. And so I try to keep that in mind. But, I think that if there's something that you really love, then you will just always love it. You won't get burned out. So I'm trying to keep my mind open. There's a lot of different fields that I haven't explored, such as dermatology and um, OB-GYN. Like, I haven't had the privilege to do a lot of that. And I still think that women's health is very important. And so I'm definitely keeping my mind open, but also emergency medicine has always been up here. Yeah.
Alrighty, I'm sorry about the off-topic question. I just was curious.
No, you're so good.
And so the next question is kind of similar to the to the question that Camden asked. So you've listed that you worked in so many areas like primary care, plastic surgery, a crisis center, and even emergency medicine. So how have those diverse experiences shaped the kind of provider you want to become someday?
Yeah, so I just realized that I always say yeah, so at the beginning of the questions.
You're all good,
Um,
trust.
so I think that exposure just really helps shape who you want to become and who you don't want to become in the healthcare field. There's of everything. There's those people that absolutely love what they do, and then there's other people that are just really burned out and don't even want to speak to students. So with that in mind, I hope and I pray that my compassion and my drive for helping others and that judgment free mindset never goes away, because it's sad to see when someone who works so hard to get where they're at isn't happy. And I think that's one of my biggest goals. I want to be a provider that is caring, supporting, holistic, a good listener, and be there for my patients, because at the end of the day, patients are what's important for the field. And so I want to prioritize that, to never feel that feeling where it's like, oh, like here we go again with this person, or here we go again with um this person that's calling again, or like this. It just feels wrong. It feels like I just shouldn't have gone in that field in the first place if I'm letting little things like that bother me that much. So I think that that's the biggest thing. And I think also just being exposed to so many terrible situations from the crisis center and the paramedic clinicals. And by terrible, I mean like specific patient stories that just have gone through so much. You really are helping people at their most vulnerable times. So my goal is just to never lose that compassion and that drive to help serve my patients.
You've also deeply you've also deeply passionate about serving underserved communities and advancing minority, women's, and LGBTQ healthcare. What drives that passion, and what changes do you hope to see in the future?
Yeah, so I think that mostly for that specific, it's so important for each department and each specific medical specialty to have enough representation. And to me, I think that is so important to keep advocating for women's health, especially in our political climate right now and the LGBTQ community right now. So to me, it's almost kind of like a challenge as well, that I'm it's keeping me my drive going, where it's like I know that people are struggling a lot right now in this specific field, and I want to be able to give what my community needs. And so at the end of the day, I try to keep it in mind that maybe I do like emergency medicine, but there might be a specific field that I'm just, really needed at, and that's what's gonna end up being my specialty. Um, I'm really interested in serving underserved populations, and when it comes to that, you just see a little bit of everything. So keeping that in mind as well.
That's wonderful. So congratulations on being selected as one of the just 20 delegates for the American Academy of Physician Associates House of Delegates. Can you share what that means to you and what kind of impact you hope to have through this opportunity?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for the congrats.
Of
I
course.
definitely didn't think that I was gonna get it. So the way that it works is they want representation from all walks of life in the PA profession. And to me, as an incoming PA, it's such an honor to be able to be a part of this group of students that will ultimately help shape the career. So the biggest thing and the biggest goal for this specific position is to be able to advance the profession and be able to put policies that will help our profession. And I'm really looking forward to it. We've already started with our meetings. And to me, as I was in the meetings, it was just further seeing like how important representation is, how I was one of the few Hispanic women that were, in that room or in that Zoom meeting, and and it was just it was an honor and it was a privilege, and just because we haven't been represented in the past doesn't mean that we're not welcome there and we're not important there. So I really find that as a privilege to be there. And my hope with this is just to be able to get other people involved with the that are interested in the PA profession and to keep advocating for it and keep teaching others about it because it's definitely not as known as other professions and to keep improving it in any way that we can.
I really love the drive that you have for all of your work. Of
Thank you.
course, of course. Beyond your professional work, you've been mentoring and even offering free interviews for PA students. What inspires you to give back in this way? And what has the response been like from students?
Yeah, I have gone through a lot of very extensive research and extensive LinkedIn stalking, as you would call it, with looking for mentors that look like me and that would be willing to help. And um, after all of that digging, I was finally able to find one amazing mentor for me, and her name is Laura. I want to give her a big shout out. And she was everything to me, and she was so inspiring. And I would always say to her, thank you so much for helping me and for giving me that drive as well. How can I repay you? And one of the biggest things that she would always say is just pay it forward. And so that is the biggest thing that I'm trying to do, pay it forward, because you just never know who is out there needing it the most and what particular situation they're in. And, everyone, regardless of where they are in life, deserve to pursue that higher education if they really want it. So I want to be able to provide for students that are maybe not in the best financial, positions. And so I really want to be able to provide for free those services. In the PA field, it's become very uh how do I say this in a respectful way? Very I
Competitive?
guess yeah, it's become competitive, yes, but it's also become saturated with a lot of people who say that they will help for a lot of money. And it at the end it's very, in my opinion, it's very predatory towards students because you're already struggling as a student and you're already making probably not that much money as a medical assistant trying to get into PA school, and PA school itself is very expensive. So I'm trying to also help those students that maybe can't afford those expensive services and try to make a difference out there and give them that reassurance that you don't have to have so much money. Like I didn't have so much money to be able to afford these services, and I was still able to get help every once in a while from here and there for free. So I want to be that for other people too. And to answer the other part of the question, because I don't want to forget it, I forgot to answer the other part of the question. Um, I I have had such a positive response from students. I always have those DMs that are like, wow, you're so inspiring, and I really admire what you do. And I know that you're so busy, but I really appreciate you putting your time to help me. And a lot of, I've gotten to know a lot of the students that I've worked with, and they have very, very powerful stories, and they are just as deserving as I am to be in the PA profession. So that's my goal, to be able to help them get there.
That's amazing. I really love that goal of yours.
Thank you.
So looking ahead, as you step into the next chapter of PA school, what's your vision, for yourself as a future PA, and what advice would you give to students who are just starting their own journey in healthcare?
My vision, that's hard because I don't know how much time I will have. But I definitely want to keep putting my story out there on social media. I want to keep people updated with what I'm doing and how I'm doing. I think it's so important to stay realistic and be transparent with people because it's not an easy field, and it's very likely that I might fail an exam, and I want to be there for people that, maybe are really beating themselves up for that failure, but it's quite normal. Like that was something that our program director said. Each one of you guys will fail at least one exam, and we'll be there for you guys to be able to help because it's challenging. It's a lot of material at the same time. And so I want to be as transparent as I can with my content and be realistic and not be like romanticizing, because it's not all love and rainbows and all of that. It's a hard field for sure. And I would say to students who are starting their own journey in healthcare to definitely stay motivated, find your passion and find that those few things that really make you driven, and just write them down in front of your desk and in your studying desk. Write them down and keep them present. If you are someone that struggles with beating themselves up for having not the best grades or something like that, know that that's not all that they look for, and that it's also possible to get there without all of that under your belt. And, at the end of the day, it's that drive that's going to get you there, and those experiences, and be able to get through all of those challenges. That's what's going to get you there. And always remember where you come from and where you've been at, and that will be able to help you achieve what you want. So, yeah, and I mean, if I'm able to do it, anyone can. I am not the brightest in grades, and I'm not like the most smart person out there, but like I said, I'm very stubborn, and so if you're stubborn, you can get there.
Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your journey and the incredible work that you're doing.
Your story as a first generation graduate, immigrant, and future PA is so inspiring, and it's clear how much you're already giving back to others. And to everyone listening, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Battles and Voices. We hope you feel encouraged by Clareth's passion and commitment to representation, mentorship, and serving communities in need.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow, share, and stay tuned for more meaningful conversation. We'll see you next time on Vitals and Voices.